All right. Well, thanks for your patience as we waited for any last-minute attendees. Thank you for attending this morning's Parent Coffee on navigating the college path for Chinese families. You might have seen the sign on the door said Admissions 101. We're talking about what we would like to say are the nuts and bolts of the admissions process. My name is Corey Zimmerman. I've been a college counselor at SAS for 5 years. Regardless of what grade your child is in, could be elementary, could be high school, anything in between. I hope today's presentation will be helpful in illustrating what lies ahead for your child and how our office supports each student in their college application journey. So I'm fortunate to work with a team of 8 college counselors here. In our careers, we have worked at numerous colleges and universities as admissions officers, and then at even more high schools across the world, advising students and their parents on discovering colleges of great fit and aspiration. I think the number of years we have in the business is 150 or so, but who's counting? As your student navigates high school and the college admissions process, they will have 3 individuals guiding them along the way. In grade 9, students will be assigned a personal academic counselor, or PAC, P-A-C for short. The PAC will stay with your student for all 4 years of high school and will provide both social emotional support and academic support as needed. Each student also has a 4-year advisor assigned them throughout high school, and this individual will work with your student alongside a group of their peers on a weekly basis, providing opportunities for building community and social emotional learning. And finally, your child will be assigned to a college counselor in grade 10. Specifically, the college counselor's first introduction to your student is in February of 10th grade and specific to course selection for grade 11. In grade 11, your student's college counselor will begin to introduce the college application process and continue to work with your students through their senior year, guiding them every step of the way through the college application process. At SAS, we are fortunate to provide this degree of support for your child. As a college counseling team, we like to think of the 4-year high school experience as it is related to the college counseling process. And you will see there is a QR code there if you would like this presentation. Grade 9 is the transition to high school. There's no real focus on college during this year. Students should begin getting used to the rigors of high school, explore subjects they find interesting, and start to join clubs, sports, and other activities they might find appealing. In grade 10, we encourage self-exploration. This is when students start to home in on what it is that they like to learn about, consider how they like to learn, and delve deeper into the activities they like to explore. In grade 11, students continue the process of self-exploration and begin to couple that exploration with the college search, relating what and how they enjoy learning and what activities they enjoy engaging in to how they may be able to continue that growth in college. And in grade 12, students will work on their college applications and begin the transition to university or their post-secondary plans. Our office also employs a college counseling philosophy to help guide the process for each and every student and family. That philosophy reads, each student's college counseling process is unique. The college counselors meet students where they are. We respect each student's individual perspectives, needs, and aspirations, and we recognize that each student and their family will approach will approach this from their own unique set of circumstances. We strive to ensure that every family receives the level of service that is appropriate to their needs. Extraordinary care at SAS means that the College Counseling Office emphasizes each of the 4 pillars of responsibility, education, support, and empowerment. Now I'm putting that up there for you to take it in as well. I want to highlight the underlined words here. Our theme focuses on the individual needs of our students. Our council is unique to ensure that the schools that they apply to are fit. And that is our philosophy, our practice, and our purpose. Even though we are an American school, it's important to know that SAS students apply to countries all over the world. However, the vast majority of students, 90% all told, will apply to the United States, with 80% of students or so attending college in the United States. This is important to note as it explains why much of our programming revolves around the US application process. US colleges are looking to build a living and learning community as they review and evaluate applicants. They are not looking for each student to be a mirror image of each other, interested in the same areas of study and having the same passions and hobbies. Because of this, despite common belief, there isn't a formula as to what a student should be doing in high school to prepare for the college application. We often get questions from students and parents asking us if their children should join a specific club, participate in a specific research opportunity, engage in a particular internship, among other things. Our answer is always the same. Students should do what they are curious about, what interests them, what excites them. Each university in the US will have different curricular requirements for their applicants and will employ institutional priorities that help them create the community they are hoping to maintain. It is safe to say that how successful a student is in high school is the best predictor of success at university. Therefore, colleges all place value on the grades that a student is earning in high school and the rigor of the coursework they are taking. Finally, they will pay attention to grade trends, which I will talk about in more depth in just a few minutes. You will often hear the term holistic admission from colleges in the United States. This is because in addition to looking at the courses a student is taking and the grades they are earning, colleges are looking at a variety of other factors, including, but not limited to, essays, extracurricular involvement, letters of recommendation, and general personal qualities of the applicant. Colleges will always review an application within the context of where the student is applying from. They want to see how students are taking advantage of what they are being afforded within their school and community. Keep in mind that we support students as they apply to colleges outside of the US as well. The past few years, we have had Chinese citizens apply to colleges in more than 10 countries. Each country has its own unique process, and we are here to guide students as they determine which country or countries may be the best fit for them. For the most part, universities outside the US place more emphasis on academic preparation and less emphasis on extracurricular involvement, essays, or letters of recommendation. A notable exception to this is the UK, where both essay and reference are important in addition to academic qualifications. All right. So here is an example of what a high school transcript from SAS looks like. Please keep in mind that this is a sample transcript and that the student is fictitious, with courses, grades, GPA calculations that are completely made up. Nothing on this transcript is accurate except the format, and that is why we want to share it with you at this time. This document is communicating a 4-year academic journey of a student. Let me explain what we have on the screen. On the left-hand side, we have all the courses and grades that a student has taken since the 9th grade. From the top, we have 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. In the middle, we have the student's grades, as well as credits for each class. On the right side, in the upper right corner, we have current courses, then the grading scale, and then any additional comments to provide necessary curricular context. And at the very bottom, we have a general overview of the student's academic progression with the semester GPA broken out and their cumulative GPA at the very bottom. So we need to begin by understanding that this transcript is an official academic record, and it is not subject to change. It is permanent. Also, keep in mind that the grades and GPA are only calculated from courses your child takes here at SAS. If your child is a transfer student sometime in high school, those records from the other high school will be sent separately to colleges. Grades from other high schools they may have attended will not be factored into the SAS GPA. With that being said, the reason the transcript is so important is because it is interpreted as a predictor of success in college, and that's a big deal. Thus, you should consider the following. Each year is seen as more important than the previous one. There should be evidence of increasing academic rigor with successful performance in those classes, and getting lower grades in too difficult a course load is never helpful for college admission. So there's a bit of a tension here. Colleges want students to stretch themselves and try new things while learning that struggling is good and develops resiliency. Yet when you look at college admissions, too much struggle, especially that which results in lower grades, can work against a student. To dive a bit deeper, GPA is the average number of grade points earned in each class. We calculate a GPA for each semester, which is printed at the bottom of the transcript, as we saw on the last slide. And we also convey a cumulative GPA, which is the official GPA for the college application. Keep in mind that distinct grades are more important than the GPA in most cases. It's like a camera lens. When you zoom out, what you see is the cumulative GPA. But when you zoom in, you look at the courses and the grades earned in them, and it is those individual courses and grades, as well as grade trends, that matter most to colleges. Oh, sorry, full transcript there. All right, the last detail we want to bring your attention to is credits. Credits are what you earn when you successfully pass a class. Here at SAS, for every completed semester, you get a half credit, which is awarded for each class. For a full year course, 1 credit is earned. You need 24 credits to graduate from SAS with a minimum of 16.5 specific compulsory credits. The course selection process is important, and we have a very extensive list of offerings. Each year, we publish the Program Planning Guide, which details each course offered and a description of the course. We give students roughly 1 month to review the PPG and meet with either their personal academic counselor or college counselor to discuss courses that might be of interest and a good fit for the student to take, and that will prepare them for the college application process. The college counselors support course registration starting in March for students in grades 10 and 11. Personal academic counselors do the same for students in grade 9. We ask students to start thinking about the countries to which they'd like to apply and if they are leaning towards any fields of study at that point. This will help us guide students as they select courses for grades 11 and 12. This registration process concluded last month for the next academic year. Most students begin to incorporate advanced studies courses, which include both advanced placement and advanced topic in grades 11 and 12. All AP courses culminate with an exam at the very end of the course, whereby a student may be potentially eligible to earn college credit depending upon the score that they earn and the policies of the college they attend. We do cap the number of AP courses, or credits, a student can take to 7. Please note that AP credits are not the same as AP courses or AP exams. AT courses are just as rigorous as AP courses. However, they do not always align with an AP exam. AT typically incorporates more collaborative, project-based, or experiential learning, as they are not preparing students for a prescribed external examination at the end of the course. Please keep in mind that if students are applying to universities in the UK or the Netherlands, we will be guiding your student to take AP courses, as they are very important in the application processes for those 2 countries. Standardized testing has become less of a focus of many colleges and universities, particularly in the United States, throughout the past few years. Most colleges and universities are currently test optional, meaning that students can choose to submit their SAT or ACT if they believe it will add value or enhance their application, but they are not required for admission. While most colleges and universities do not require standardized testing, we still recommend that students take the SAT or the ACT, especially as a few universities have decided to bring back their testing requirement. Our recommendation is that students take the SAT or ACT for the first time in 11th grade, and a subsequent test or tests, if needed, either again in 11th grade or toward the beginning of 12th grade. Some universities and colleges in the United States and elsewhere may require students to take an English language proficiency exam. We recommend that students take such a test only when it is specifically requested by the university. So remember from our previous slide that students should be focusing on different tasks and themes throughout their high school career. Again, those are 9th grade, connection; 10th grade, balance; 11th grade, life skills; 12th grade, transitions. And within these themes, they should be exploring classes and finding academic and extracurricular interests and passions. It is important to ensure that your child has both. Reading is such a valuable tool, and we can't emphasize this enough. Reading helps students develop and enhance both their vocabulary and their writing skills, and can aid in preparation for standardized testing and in essay writing. Finally, how can you as parents help? We understand that it can be difficult to have conversations with your child. We know it can be more awkward talking about college and the future. But building a habit and a culture of open communication and conversations in your family is extremely important. These conversations do not necessarily have to be about college, especially if you have a child who is in 10th grade or younger. In grades 9 and 10, have conversations about what your child is excited about, what they like to learn, what activities they enjoy, what kind of environment they like to be in. You'll see some others up here. Give them opportunities to reflect both on what they like to do and do not like to do, so that when they begin to reflect more specifically as it relates to college research, they will have a better understanding of themselves. In grades 11 and 12, having conversations about life after high school, whether it's about college, national service, or a gap year, will become much more important. However, it's important to ensure that not every single conversation you have with your child is about college. Don't forget that the college process is just one part of their identity. We offer a number of ways for you to continue to connect with the College Counseling Office. Our website has a wealth of information. We post relevant announcements about events in Singapore through our SAS College Counseling Facebook page. Throughout the year, we offer a number of programs for you to participate in. For example, we host college counseling coffees like this one that focus on a specific topic such as college athletics, admission around the world. Additionally, we host parent counselor chats, which are small group gatherings by grade level. Be sure to check both your email and the SAS e-news each week to learn about our programming. You can also view videos of our past presentations and programming in the My SAS portal. And as your child begins to do his or her college research in grade 11, you will also be given access to Maya Learning, which is our college counseling research and organization platform. Now we're going to open things up to questions, but a few of you submitted questions in advance, and I've put them here. So I will answer them here before then opening up the floor to more questions that you might have. And I haven't provided answers yet, so I will try to speak as sort of slowly as possible for these ones. I'll start with the top question. What is the influence of Singapore National Service on the college application? And then more generally, how do we support the college applications of children who have served in the military, done national service? So the influence of national service, to start off, national service, very basically, all Singaporean male permanent residents and citizens will serve 2 years directly after high school, in our case. We have about maybe almost 40 graduates a year for whom this is a requirement. So we have, among the 8 college counselors, about 5 students each in the first year and second year of NS that we support. We treat them just as if they were our students at SAS. We worked with them in their senior year. We continue to work with them in both years if they are continuing to apply to college or if they decided never to apply to college in high school and they wanted to wait until NS. We support them as their college counselor. So that means all of the things that we do with our 12th grade students. We help them with their essays, to review their essays, to conference about those, to build their college list. Where will they be applying? To support them with letter of recommendation that we write for every student. To help with deadlines and with communicating with universities if there are any things that need to be conveyed. So just as if they were still a student here. What is the influence? I have seen, anecdotally, national service really boost some young men's college chances in terms of the type of university that they may be admissible to. That is not everyone who does NS. A couple reasons for that I see. For many boys, 9th grade and sometimes 10th grade is not their best academic year. They take a little bit longer to mature than girls, typically, generally. And the upward grade trend that I was talking about that is so important is much more common with boys than it is with girls. And so a student applying during NS has the entirety of grade 12, that academic record of courses and grades for the entire grade 12 to present to universities when they apply, if they apply during NS. Whereas applying during 12th grade, you don't have any grades, official grades on your transcript when you initially apply to universities. So for those boys who maybe struggled in the first 3 semesters of high school and then really got better academically, they're getting that whole 12th grade to show one more year of that upward trend. So we do see that for those types of upward trending boys, we can see that be a positive factor, and that's because NS delayed their application process. The other factor is that in NS, I have had boys lead soldiers, like as cadets in the Army. I have seen others be part of the police force, et cetera, et cetera. You know about these things if you have a child that might be going into it. That is very uncommon, especially in a place like the US, where students apply directly out of high school and maybe have never had a job or any sort of big responsibility in their life. When you receive an applicant from here who can say, I'm serving my country in these very adult ways, these very sort of independent and mature ways, that really sticks out in the application because they present something very different than most other students applying to the university. So again, that's just generally speaking. It's all about what a student, well, a graduate at that point, might be able to do during NS, what experiences they are able to accumulate that might be related to something they want to study, or that might give them a deeper sense of what direction they want in their life. That's the important part, okay? Long answer, sorry. All right, the next question, what is the admission rate to top 20 US colleges for children with Chinese passports? Okay, very specific question. So, I will not answer it exactly this way, primarily because what the top 20 is something maybe different depending on who you ask. However, I didn't just want to say, therefore I'm not answering the question. So I did look, I will get specific as well. In the last 3 years, I looked at admissions data for SAS students by passport just to Ivy League institutions. I say Ivy because there's 8 of them. I would say most people probably consider them to be in the top 20. And I looked at the difference in admit rate between Chinese passport holders in the last 3 years and just the overall SAS class. There is a 0.5 percentage point difference. between Chinese passport holders and the overall number. It happens to be 0.5% lower for Chinese passport holders, but such a small difference that is basically statistically insignificant, negligible. It's basically the same, okay? So if the question is asking, maybe like in line with the next question, will Chinese passport holding students be at a disadvantage when applying? I hope that statistic that I just gave you shows, at least for that group of schools, no. And overall at US universities, students with non-US passports, for many universities, these students, because they will pay higher fees if it's a public institution than the in-state students, universities rely upon non-US passport holders to pay the money that helps the university run. So from a pragmatic perspective, international students are important to US universities in many cases. Having said that, something else that universities like to have is a diversity of passports in their international students. There has traditionally been a large group of students from China, or at least that have a Chinese passport, applying to US universities. So a Chinese passport in and of itself, while it does represent usually a full-paying student, it's not a passport where a university goes, oh, we got a Chinese applicant, like they might say for someone from Kyrgyzstan or a much smaller country that doesn't necessarily send a lot of students. So in the end, it's not a disadvantage. It's also conversely not an advantage per se. Okay. Now a caveat here, perhaps part of the question is a disadvantage when it comes to getting a visa to study in the United States. I want to clarify that the admissions process and the visa process are completely different. So universities make a decision about a student enrolling at their university. If they want to admit that student, that will be reliant upon the student on the back end obtaining whatever visa they may need to study in the United States. And universities have big teams of people that support students in obtaining those visas. How that might change with the political winds, I do not know. But in terms of admission, it is separate. Okay. The fourth question, are there any recommended internship opportunities during summer for 10th or 11th graders? You may remember earlier I said we would say, as a general rule, follow what you are interested in, as opposed to saying, do this thing. So generally speaking, doing an internship after 10th or 11th grade, if a student comes to me and says, I'm really thinking of doing an internship with this research professor at a university, or I want to, my parents have a contact in a financial corporation that takes on high school interns, I will say, does it sound interesting to you? What do you hope to learn from it? Who do you hope to meet? Or would you be okay if you absolutely hated it and then realized maybe you don't want to do that in the future? If they can answer affirmatively to those things, that they would enjoy it while learning something about themselves and about an area of study or the working world, great. The important thing about doing an internship is what you can either write about or communicate in your college application that relates to the experience. If you apply to a college and it says you had 5 different internships and you don't speak a word about what you learned from those, there's no evidence that those mattered to you, they might as well not exist in the application. They will not matter to the reader. This goes for the US. This certainly goes for the UK, where they do look to see that any super curricular activities relate to the thing that you want to study. Okay. So no recommended internships specifically, but we do recommend that if students are interested in using their summer to intern, that they be thoughtful about where that is so that it can be a useful or a good use of their time. Okay, so Fifth question, are Hong Kong and American passport holders put into separate applicant pools with regard to admissions decisions? It's a good question. And maybe I can broaden it and just say American passport holders and non-US passport holders. It depends on the school. So public institutions in the United States, these are state schools, sometimes known as state schools. An example is the University of California system, University of Texas, University of Michigan. They exist primarily to serve the tax-paying students of that state. And so the vast majority of the students enrolling at those institutions are from the state that the college is in. For instance, the University of California system has a mandate to have just about 82% of their campuses be Californian students, okay? And so in this case, Hong Kong or an American passport holder, if they're applying to the University of California system, they're actually seen in the same light because neither of those is going to be a California resident for the purposes of admission to the UCs. Because they require that you went to high school in California for 3 years to be Californian, okay? So in this case, you're being read in the non-California applicant pool, okay? And then you're part of that maybe 18% that can attend the university as opposed to the vast majority from California, okay? So on the other hand, there will be some universities that have a directive from on high, from the president, from the board of directors, whatever you might call it, to say, we want to have as many students as possible from as many US states as possible, and we're going to more or less cap the number of non-US passport holders we can have, because that's part of their mission, let's say, is to serve certain populations maybe from the US. So an example, there's a small liberal arts college in California, sorry to use California again, private institution that when we talked with them a couple years ago after their early decision round, we talked to their international person, the person who reads applicants from non-US schools. She said she was able to recommend 10 students total from outside the US to the domestic committee to consider admitting at early decision. 10 students from outside the US. An incredibly small number, okay? Now, does that mean then that Hong Kong versus American, they would look the same? It depends on what the domestic committee is then able to do. Maybe they can only consider the US passport holders at that point, and then call it a day. And then the international committee person has their number that they can admit. It sounds arcane, but the point is they have to be very careful to hit the numbers they are allowed to hit. Okay. Now, if the question is asking about Hong Kong passport, in general, there will be way fewer Hong Kong applicants than, let's say, mainland China applicants. So for some schools, a Hong Kong applicant may stick out as quite unique in the applicant pool. It could be a good thing. Maybe, but it depends. Okay. All right. Finally, will an SAS student who is a US citizen be considered a domestic or international student in the University of California pool? Kind of answered this already, right? For the purposes of admission, they won't be Californian, and that's what matters in that instance, okay? And just to illustrate this, I read for University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA, I read applications as an outside reader 3 cycles ago. So if you didn't know, UCLA, UC Berkeley, they get over 100,000 applications a year. They employ like 250 college counselors from around the world to read their applications. you do it over your winter holiday break. So, and there's no conflicts of interest because you don't read from the region. In the end, it is an incredibly small number that are being considered for admission at any of those highly selective public institutions in California. Okay. I think in the end, it's a 3% admit rate, something like that, for students attending schools outside of the US at the highly selective California schools. Okay. All right. Those are the questions you submitted. Now, we have about 15 minutes before the top of the hour, which is perfect timing so that if any of you have questions, either inspired by this presentation or you'd like more clarity on something, happy to answer those. And if you would need to ask the question in Chinese, please do. Just make sure that our interpreter can hear it in the back, and then I can put on my device and get the translation. All right. Any questions? Can she hear you back? I can give you the mic. Yes, of course.
我想问一个关于第二外语的那个问题。我听到一种声音，就是说，如果这个孩子有中国背景，或者从他的姓中，或者是他的passport 是中国的，那么选择中文作为第二外语来说呢，好像就是说一个不太有利的方面。但是其实像我们这种，就是说孩子从小在国外长大。要学好一门就是语言，包括中文，也是需要付出很大的努力。我就想问一下您的意见，就是说，像我们这样的孩子，如果从新加坡去申请，把中文作为第二外语，是不是可以？
Great question. Thanks for asking it. This is a topic that we have discussed in our office extensively in the last couple of years, I think, especially as the number of students taking Chinese at SAS continues to grow, or it seems like it continues to grow. And many of those students do come from a background, at least as their passport would say, where Chinese would be the spoken language at home, or maybe they grew up speaking it if they spent time in their home country. So what is most important is that if a student takes Chinese and there's any evidence of it being their native language, the language spoken at home, that they take it to a generally high level in high school. So it will not be a penalty that they're taking the language that might be spoken at home, because academic Chinese is more than just speaking. It's reading, it's writing, it's sometimes at these AT levels, like the highest courses we offer, it's hard. It's really hard. So that is recognized as long as the student is taking it to that higher level. So it's either taking it to one of our advanced level options, if they're doing that early in high school, or taking it for at least 3 years in high school, if not 4 years, if they have not reached that advanced level by the end of high school. Okay. Yes.
我也用中文问吧。就是谢谢你的介绍。刚才在你的那个 presentation 里，我们听到了关于美国的高校和英国和欧洲的一些学校的申请的要求。我想问一下，就是基于您的经验，加拿大的高校的录取的这个要求和美国的高校的录取的要求有什么显著的一样的地方和显著的不一样的地方吗？谢谢。
Another great question. I'm glad you asked about Canada, because every year it's either our second or third most matriculated to country. So US always number 1, and then either UK or Canada will be number 2. Canadian universities, admissions, the basics here. They are looking at 11th and 12th grade. Upon application, they're really focused on 11th grade, the courses you took, and the grades you got, but specifically the courses that are related to the academic subject you would like to study in university. So there is less of a need to be really well-rounded academically in Canada compared to the US. Okay? As a comparison, in the UK, there's even less of a need because the UK just wants you to be go deep in something very related to the course of study you want to do. So it's kind of in between. Canadian universities are large, generally. They are large. There's fewer of them, way fewer than the US, and they are much larger. Admissions-wise, this means the door is much wider open for students to be admitted, if not to their first choice program, then to a second choice program. And universities will actually encourage students to put multiple choices in terms of a course of study so that they have a better chance of getting in. So where the US seems to say, we want to keep you out, they aren't really doing that, but that it seems that way. Canada is more, we want to have you here. You just need to be a bit flexible sometimes. Cheaper than the US, regardless of citizenship. In most cases, I suppose a medical or sometimes an engineering program might be a bit more expensive. And I will say many of our students that apply to Canada also apply to the US or to the UK, sometimes to Australia, because they want to weigh the different offers that they get. In fact, I just had a student yesterday who was 95% sure she would be going to the UK, and she got all 5 offers from the UK, thought about it long and hard, made her decision, and then the next day, McGill University admitted her. She forgot she applied. It had been October when she applied, or November. And then she was like, oh, I really wanted to go to McGill. Now I remember, she's going to McGill. So she told me yesterday. But the point being, she was going between different countries, giving herself many options at the end of the day. And the other theme there is sometimes it takes them a long time to make a decision. But I like Canada. So just the fact that we didn't talk about it doesn't mean that our students aren't interested or it's not a good place to land. I think it's great. You do need to, though, just remember that you have to have some sort of idea of what you want to study because they will look at your transcript to judge those classes. Others?
谢谢。那个，我有一个问题是关于就是学校的大小的，因为我经常听到 counselor 讲，就是不要去很大的 university， 然后去相对比较小的。然后同样的，其实我们现在也看到有很多的文理学院是非常优秀的。我特别想了解一下，就是从 counselor 的角度，你是怎么看待这个学校大小的问题？还有就是我们应该是什么样的学生很适合去文理学院？
Thank you. So the question about the size of the university and what to consider there. So one common phrase we use in college counseling is, it depends. So it's not telling you one way or the other, but here it depends on your child and how they learn best. So I say that because I'll use an extreme example. Arizona State University has, I think, 60,000 undergrads. There are some children for whom that would be a disaster for them to be going to that size of a university because it is a student that prizes one-on-one interaction with professors or with teachers here, but they know that that means they would want those sort of personal relationships with professors who just taking 30 minutes to get from one class to another and to take a shuttle across campus, it just doesn't feel like home to them. And so for that student, something much smaller would probably be better. Now on the other side, we are a school of 1,200 high schoolers here. There are some colleges that are that size or smaller in the United States. I think of one like Harvey Mudd College in California. I don't even think it has 1,000 students. I think it's like 950 students. For some people, they cannot imagine going to a place smaller than their high school. And so even though Harvey Mudd, you would get a top-notch STEM education there. It's one of the best. I think it has the highest starting salaries for any college, set of college graduates in the US. It doesn't mean that you would be successful going there if you think 900 is like a small village and it feels too small, too isolating, okay? So I think it has to do with thinking of how you learn best, what community, what size of community you like to be around, and then considering how can you be most successful. I think you mentioned then also arts versus science. So I think I made a distinction there between what they would call a larger research institution and a small liberal arts college. There is a philosophical difference in why professors are at these institutions. Larger research institutions, they are there to research and then to teach on the side. Liberal arts colleges, professors are there to teach undergraduate students only and do research, but mostly teach undergrads, okay? So the focus you will get from your teachers, from your professors, and they will be full professors at these small liberal arts colleges, the focus will be on you, not on their master's students, not on their doctoral students, not on their research institute where they're holed away 6 days a week and then they come out of hiding for 1 day to teach and then go back. The focus is on the undergrad. Okay. You want to think about what resources do you want in college, and are you the type to go after them and take advantage of them? The more you have that pluck or that ability to say, I want to go after this, the larger the university could be. That could be a good home for your child. Yeah. Okay.
我的孩子现在还9年级，完全不知道他有什么兴趣，或者他要学什么专业。那我想了解一下，如果说到12年级，是不是我们的孩子们都大概有一个方向？那如果到申请大学的时候还不知道，那应该怎么办？或者大学里，我知道美国的大学对于专业的是很你可以随时换嘛。那我在申请的时候，是不是一定要有一个定下来的专业的方向？谢谢。
Great, another great question. Really talking about knowing what you want to study or not before you apply to college. You brought up a good point that in the US, generally speaking, you don't apply to a major. You apply to the university, generally speaking. And then you choose your major, you declare that major by the end of year 2, before you still have 2 more years of college. Outside the US, not the case usually. Outside the US, you need to know, or at least you need to declare what that course of study is, because when you get to university, you will take modules just in that general area that you applied to. It runs the gamut. We have students who still don't know by May 1st of their senior year what they want to study. And hopefully and necessarily, they will have applied to the US because that's the type of place that would see that, not indecision, but that interest in many different areas and see that as a positive thing. And then equally, by equal measure, perhaps maybe even more than those undecided students, we have ones who have known since 7th grade, since 4th grade, whatever, that they want to do a particular thing. I have a student this year who knew since 5th grade that he wanted to be a doctor, and it was because of his 5th grade teacher who fell very ill in the middle of the school year and, let's just say, was unable to come back for the 2nd semester. And that personal impact on him said, I want to help people in a medical capacity. he will do pre-med in college. So he's known for a long time. We support everyone. And there's no imperative from the US universities to have a student declare or say, I know this is what I want to do and here's why. They're very open to hearing that. But if you're not decided, you just need to be able to say what things you are interested in and why. And then they will get a good idea of how you will take advantage of their resources to make those decisions once you get to college. Addendum there is that the US high school curriculum, like that you've signed your kids up for here in the high school, is necessarily broad. We require classes from a wide range of subjects, and we encourage students, at least for the first 3 years of high school, if not all 4, to engage in that wide range, because US universities appreciate the student who, even if they are decided in one direction, they are still able to go deep and wide across the curriculum, because they will require some semblance of that in college as well.
我又有一个问题，就是我知道有很多的家长，在9年级以后的暑假开始就给孩子申请，美国的高校的夏校，还有一些是去安排孩子去他们想要去的这些高校去参观，我不知道，就是从你的经验来看，就是去参观这些学校，应该要看哪些主要的方面，要了解哪些信息，然后就是夏校这个事情，到底有多少的价值？谢谢。
Thank you. Collectively, you have such good questions today. This was about using your summers, especially with regard to visiting colleges, whether it's for tours or for programs hosted by colleges. I think both have value. Let me start with the programs, summer camps that are at colleges. If you have never been to the US, and it's not just the US that offers these, but many abound in the US. If you've never been or you've never set foot on a college campus, there's nothing like spending a few days, a week or two at a college campus to feel like you're an actual college student and understand what it's like in real life, to experience all these things that maybe you just hear about or see in the movies, right? So from the experience perspective, I think a summer camp for someone as young as 9th grade can be really good. What it is not is a leg up in the admissions process at that school 3 years later if you were to apply. And that's a maybe misunderstanding that some people have, is if I do the Harvard summer program, I'm just saying, my kid did a program at Harvard, maybe he has a better chance. No, doesn't mean that he couldn't get in. It just wouldn't be because he did the Harvard summer program, okay? Now, having said that, for smaller universities, where let's say a student does a camp at a university, let's say summer after 10th grade, and they get taught by a full professor there, and they really took to that class, to the teaching, they really want to attend that university, they stay in touch with that professor. I mean, that's a real, substantive connection that student is making to a university community. It's maybe one they couldn't have predicted beforehand would happen, but since it did, that goes a long way for let's say a smaller community where they value students really knowing what it's like to be on that campus and to be part of that academic community. So I think there's value there. And then briefly about visits, touring a college in a very similar way it's a great way to understand not just what the university looks and feels like, but what the surroundings are like. How long is it from the airport? Is there a city close by? Does the city that surrounds it feel suffocating? What's the food like? That matters, for some people. What does it say in the campus newspaper, the student newspaper? Are the students generally happy there or not? Is your tour guide smiling? I mean, I had a student who wants to apply to a university in part because her tour guide smiled the whole time. And to her, she said, people are happy here. It matters, right? So you can only get some of that stuff by going to the universities. Quick caveat, no university will ever expect that you visited in order to admit your child. They can't, especially living overseas. You can't hop in the car. You've got to fly across the ocean. So they will never expect that. But it can be good for you if you do visit so that they know you have that connection to it. Okay.
So I found in the graduation book every year, I didn't see any local Singapore university. I guess probably like NUS or NTU is not so attractive for the SAS students. My question is, what is your experiences about SAS students applying for the local university, especially if they are PR or citizens? Do they need to apply from AP or they need to take additional IB programs? Thank you.
Great question. Yes, NUS, NTU, SMU, it seems like no one's going, it sounds like. We do have students who go, if not to all three of those every year, with some sort of frequency over the years. The big reason that you probably don't see more students going than applying is that most students who apply are also applying to the US, to the UK, to Canada. They receive those offers from those other countries, and then they have to make a deposit by May 1st, or in the UK, they make their choices by June. And because they basically commit to these other places, they don't follow through with submitting their final AP scores to the universities here in order to get a final decision. That sounds very technical, but I think the point is the timeline is incongruous with other countries to the point where students make the decision to go somewhere else before getting the final result. Now, I mentioned AP scores. Singapore universities are very keen on lots of testing, okay? SAT, AP, 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 all the APs. Now, again, your child, if they're keen on going to Singapore for university, it doesn't mean they should be taking more APs than they can handle. But at the same time, most NUS, NTU, let's say those two programs or those two universities, most programs at those universities want to see a lot of testing, and they want to see 4s and 5s, if not 5s, on the exams. No IB is required, no A levels, no GCSE. Just they will read the context of the school, but because we offer AP, they want to see a lot of AP. Okay. Keep in mind that the National University of Singapore requires Calculus BC, AP Calculus BC for every program. You might want to study law. You must take Calculus BC. You might want to study English literature. Calculus BC. Okay, so just make sure NUS that you're on track to take BC Calc by senior year. If not, they will not admit you. Okay, not the same for NTU, unless it's a heavy STEM program, but then they would want to see Calc BC. PRs and citizens, we do have a number here. I have one who's keen on it for next year of my 40 students, who's a rising senior who's keen on going to NTU or NUS. It's a PR. No, citizen. That's pretty typical. I think it's just by dint of families choosing to send their kids here, they're sort of choosing to maybe have them leave Singapore for university eventually. It's not that they look down upon the universities, it's a sort of self-selecting mechanism of you enroll your kid here, your idea is to send them elsewhere after. So that's partially why the lower numbers. We've got a good relationship with both the universities. It's nothing to do with that. I think it's just who we enroll at the school that keeps it lower. I hope that answers it. Yeah. I think I saw another, yeah.
谢谢您刚才讲的。我有2个问题。第一就是关于刚才那个仿校的事情，我听到一种说法是说，去访问大学的时候，最好的是在大学生们在上课的时候，也就是在这个 academic year 的中间的时候去，因为能看到学生在就是上课的那种感觉，versus夏天去，就是 哪一个会更比较推荐？因为我们在 overseas，夏天肯定会更方便一些，但是我还是想知道会不会有不同，这个时间上会不会有不同的效果？第二个问题是，当一个学生他被分配了一个 college counselor 之后，他们之间的互动是什么样的？比如说 how often，就是他们，就是每年会见几次面，有几次谈话，包括家长跟这个 college counselor 之间，会有什么样的互动？这种 interactions meetings 或者是in-person meetings，就是 how often or like how to what's the best way， 就是最好的沟通方式。对，谢谢。
Thank you. Two-part question there. Start with the first one. In terms of visiting colleges, we are constrained by the calendar and where we are in the world. So if the only time that your family has to make it to see a college is during our summer break, do it. Is that as accurate a picture of the university as it would be if you maybe visited over fall break? Maybe not, because during fall break, it would probably be in session, whereas over the summer, the undergraduates would be on their summer break. But if you're not able to travel just for 1 week in October, or let's say spring break, and summer is your only option, it's still much better than not seeing the university at all. But if you can visit for that week in the fall or the week in the spring, I would highly recommend it, because then you mentioned when the lectures are happening. There are many universities where you can sit in on classes. There are universities that have open houses, especially during spring break, because they not only have prospective students looking, they have students they've just admitted coming to campus. And so they sort of roll out the red carpet, as you might say, to their visitors. And so in the spring, it's a very lively time on campus, and people are very available to meet with you, to answer your questions, to have you sit in on their lectures, etc. Question about frequency then of meeting with college counselors. We start the counseling process in earnest with our 11th graders after our 12th graders have applied to their early schools and to the University of California system. Okay, so University of California application is due November 30th. That basically means our first set of classes that we have with the juniors starts early December. And we have 2 a month with all of our 40 kids in our individual cohorts. That's December, January, February, March, and April. So 10 classes total. In January, we start our individual meetings with juniors. We meet with them as frequently as they would like to meet with us, or the other way around. If I need to have another meeting with a student, I will call them in. But it generally works this way: an initial meeting in January or February, a course registration meeting in March, a chance for parents to come in during parent-teacher conferences in March, and then a family meeting anytime after the initial student meeting. So typically, it's one family meeting in the spring of junior year. However, sometimes I will meet with families 3 or 4 times in the junior year, after I've met with the student for the first time in the ensuing months. So there's any number of reasons for that. Sometimes parents just really appreciate an in-person conversation. Totally fine. Our practice is to have your child there with you, unless there's something that you want to discuss that is sensitive or it makes sense not to have the child there. Otherwise, we always want these conversations to be student-centered and student-driven, as opposed to students thinking that their parents and their college counselor are plotting their future for them, right? Other methods of communication. I have worked here 5 years. I can count on 2 hands how many times my phone has rang. Okay. Now, obviously, if you know, having a conversation in English is not going to be possible, I understand why my phone is not ringing more. But I am shocked at how seldom parents try to communicate and they wait for that in-person meeting to do all the communicating. So if it's not the phone, shoot me an email, right? Write that email in whatever way is comfortable. We can use Google Translate, or if it's in English, but you want to just keep it sort of brief, that's fine. Any way, whether it's phone, email, those family meetings, we want you to know that we're here to answer those questions or put you at ease. This is an anxious process. We're partially here to counsel parents as well, not just students. So I want to encourage you to over-communicate rather than thinking we're not there to talk to you. We are primarily there for your children, but we're there for you too, okay? So pick up the phone, shoot that email, and we'll respond. And some of you are much younger than junior, or your children are much younger than junior year. We can answer questions over email from parents. We just won't have family meetings until that second semester of junior year. But if you have a 9th or 10th grader, 8th or 7th grader, and you want to shoot an email to us to ask some questions, please do. You know, if I don't have the capacity to answer it at that point, I might forward it to a colleague who does, and they can respond. But we're there to answer questions. I was just gonna say last question here, because we're getting to the quarter hour and you've all been so patient. So, and then I'll stick around for more. Okay.
So as you mentioned, you can choose your major at the end of year 2 in a college. So can I apply for the university without a major when I at first, or is it better to choose a major when I apply for the university?
Thanks. Good question. So, speaking about the U.S. here, in the U.S., you may apply undecided to university. Undecided does not mean uninterested. Okay, I want to make that distinction. A student without any interests academically is not a student that a university is going to want to admit. A student who has many interests but just can't decide yet, that's great. Okay, the important thing is that you are applying to the division of the university whose majors are most attractive to you. So what I mean by that, if you apply generally undecided to a university, you will be, if you're admitted, you'll be admitted to the main college of the university, usually called the College of Arts and Sciences. That ranges from everything from chemistry to comparative religion, you know, the humanities to the hard sciences. However, if you want to be an engineer, you just don't know if you want mechanical engineering or civil engineering or electrical engineering, you can apply undecided to the engineering school. And that's fine too, because most students who think they want to be electrical engineers, they switch to computer science or something like that when they get to college anyway. So engineering schools like undecided students, but you have to be undecided within the engineering school if you want access to an engineering major, okay? So in that way, you're sort of making somewhat of a choice by saying, well, I know I want engineering, just don't know which kind. That's okay. It's usually okay. Most universities allow you to just say, hey, this division, but I don't know. Same goes for the business school. You don't know if you want to be a finance major, a marketing major, accounting major. It's okay. Undecided business, that's okay. So if we're talking outside of the US, not okay. Outside of the US, you are so, your narrative of why you want to study that topic or that subject is primary in the application. And I think you said, is it better to know what you want to study? Not necessarily. It's all about being able to express why your interest or interests lie where it does or where they do, and whether that's in a specific area or many areas, totally fine. Okay, well, thank you for everyone for staying this 75 minutes. And I'll still be up here for questions. I'll be here till the half hour, so for about 13 more minutes if you have any questions. You can get the slideshow through that QR code up there. Thank you for coming. And I have cards as well. Yeah, so if you have follow-up questions, you can find my email on here, my phone number, I think. Do I have my phone number? Yes, I do. So keep them coming as you have them. But thank you.